Welcome, everyone. We want to thank you for attending our webinar today. We'll be discussing securing your remote workforce without sacrificing connectivity. My name is Steve Cobb. I'm the CISO for OneSource, and it's a pleasure for me to introduce a friend and a colleague, a customer of OneSource's, Mr. DJ Fleming, who's the IT director at CopyPro, who's an award-winning solutions provider located in Greenville, North Carolina. Welcome, DJ. So glad you could join us here for this discussion today.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks for having me.
Sure thing. That was a real brief introduction, DJ. Do you have more you want to elaborate for yourself?
I can. I've been here at CopyPro now for over 23 years. We are award-winning solutions provider for our customers, but we are also obviously a copier dealership here in Eastern North Carolina. And like I said, this will be our 50th year in business for CopyPro as well. So I want to make sure that that I let everybody know that and get that plug in for CopyPro.
Yeah, there you go. CopyPro, fantastic business. OneSource, likewise, has been around for 27 years, I think, this year too. So it's great to meet some organizations who have some history and structure behind them. They've been there for a while. So once again, welcome. So today we're going to talk about really the way people work and how that's constantly changing, especially with this pandemic and the resurgence of the pandemic and this ongoing challenge that businesses and organizations have to allow their employees to continue to work in a safe and secure manner remotely. And we have many workforces that are hybrid, right? They're in the office some, they're at home some. How that transition looks like as you go through that, but then also how do we secure those employees, whether they are at home or whether they're in the office, and that extra step now that they're taking devices potentially in and outside of corporate spaces and connecting them back to our business networks. Close to 70% of full-time workers are still working from home in some capacity, according to a recent survey. But in order to support and protect our employees by dividing their time between being remote and working in the office, we also have to be aware and conscious of connectivity. And most importantly, at least in my mind, is data security and making those two work together. So we're going to talk today about some critical strategies, some ways that maybe DJ, you're approaching it and looking at it from a CopyPro standpoint, your business specifically. And I'll add some color and context for some of the other customers that we serve, and maybe think a little bit about how we may approach this problem and things we can do to solve it. So all that introduction out of the way and context, I want to dig into thinking about, as you all have employees, and I think you all have always had to some degree remote employees, right, DJ? You've had salespeople and other people who are in and out of the office, they travel a lot. How has the pandemic made you change how you think about those remote employees, or has it?
So with our business, when it comes to remote employees, we pretty much, that's from the get-go. Our sales reps are in the field. We hope, 99% of the time. Technicians, the same thing. So the only thing that the pandemic brought to us was that we had even more workers staying at home. So we have 20 sales reps at any given time floating around Eastern North Carolina. We have about as many technicians doing the same thing. What we had to adjust to was, now I'm going to have office workers that are now wanting an actual office. Somebody calls in sick, they go home for a day. They can, take a computer with them if they want. It's no big deal. But when you've got someone that's staying at home for 6 months, yeah. I don't want to have to track down their cell phone. I don't want to have to basically figure out where they're at. I have to have some sort of accountability, for them at their house. And, you have an 8 to 5 workday. If you're going to work from home, then be at your computer at your desk from 8 to 5. So, we did some things. We obviously, we got a VoIP system in place versus our old analog phone system that we had. We were able to basically give them an actual extension at their house. And of course, like everybody else, put them on the VPN, which I don't particularly like, but in our business, it's a necessary evil. I can't set up point to points, to everybody's house. That's, financially, right. that ain't gonna happen,
yep.
Not agreeable. So,
and let's dive into that a little bit, or think about that from the remote connectivity standpoint. Other businesses that are likewise similar spot to what CopyPro's at, and other customers that we deal with. How do you think about VPN now? So if you think about allowing those remote workers into the corporate network so they can do their job, right? And they have to have that access. How are you thinking about that differently, or are you using the same concepts and techniques and tools to do what you have always done before? Is the pandemic affected that thinking for you guys?
It has in the fact that okay, so you have a VPN, okay, and if the VPN works, everything's fine, okay. But as we know, every time there's a Microsoft update, every time something changes on your employee's network at home, you know, that may be a shared resource at their house. It may not be your computer. It may be their computer. So every time that changes, you almost have to have a help desk that does nothing but answer VPN troubleshooting calls. And our staff is not big enough to do that. We also service our customers in Eastern North Carolina as well. So for us, we were trying to get away from a VPN. So with our technicians, we basically instituted, you know, like an application or an app on their phone, or an app on their computer, or a web page that they can authenticate to, versus actually trying to get onto a VPN. Yeah. Same thing with our sales reps. We did the same exact thing. We actually built an app for our sales reps so that any information that they needed was at their fingertips, but I didn't have to monitor 20 VPNs to make sure everything was okay. We now monitor one pipe that comes in. That's the data pipe coming to that application that we can control who comes in and out of it, and we can control authentication in and out of that app as well.
Yeah. So security is natively instilled into that application then, right? You're controlling authentication different than, so one of the things that we have as we talk to customers, especially customers who have experienced a security incident, one of the ways we see attackers get in, or at least pivot to, are VPNs, right? So, you know, if people are using the same password to get on VPN they use for Netflix, it's probably out in the wild, right?
It is.
So attackers are smart enough to match names up from LinkedIn and Netflix, and now potentially they've got to log into a corporate VPN. So that always scares me. We always encourage people to do multi-factor, two-factor on anything to authenticate, VPN, your application. But you now have the ability that maybe because VPNs are low-hanging fruit, the attackers assume that corporations will have a VPN, they pivot there first, but not an app on a phone, right? So a little bit of security by hiding some of that access, right?
Yeah, and again, for me, hiding is good.
Yeah.
You know, anything that's not the ordinary, or anything that's not commonplace when it comes to network, I like. You know, if you gotta go left to go right, then I'm all about that, because that way nobody's going straight, which means straight to my network.
Right.
Yeah. So absolutely.
Yeah. If we think about those security and incidents, tell me about, you know, how has the pandemic helped you all from a security standpoint? What have you experienced there for any type of, you don't have to get into details, but challenges that you've had there, or incidents that you've had, and how you've thought about those going forward?
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong, like everybody else, I mean, everybody's trying to knock on my door. I mean, we get the security reports from one source monthly, and it lets me know exactly how many times people are trying to hit me. Right. And those are overwhelming. And as you know, a couple of years ago, we got hit pretty hard. And so, you know, those kind of things make you sit back, lose sleep, question your network, question your methods. I mean, we got hit, and it wasn't so much the fact that we got hit. You know, we got a disaster recovery plan in place, and to be honest with you, it went to crap. I mean, it was, you know, and I've said this to you before, but it's that old saying: everybody's got a plan until they get hit. You know, and then things kind of go sideways. So what we weren't prepared for was the amount of time it took to get a device certified to get it back online. And so, you know, you start to question, okay, this one got hit, who else? And what do I need to check? Is the payload still active? Is it still sitting somewhere on the network? Did somebody leave another computer on and I just didn't catch it yet? Do I want to put the servers back online, or do I want to keep them VLAN out of the way until I know that every single station on the network is clean and has been certified as clean?
Yep.
And so that was where, when we got hit, it was a question for us was, okay, are we sure? Are we sure? Are we sure? Are we sure that that we're clean and we're ready to go and turn things back on? So the pandemic, basically, if anything, it's, it had us basically kind of second guessing ourselves, because it just seemed like people had more time to sit back and see how many ways they could hack into my network.
Yeah, and those definitely, we see attempts to increase, not just against businesses like CopyPro, but across every platform there. The number of attacks have increased dramatically. But I think I want to just touch on real quick there, DJ, because I think a lot of companies think, especially if the case is ransomware or something like that, and they get a ransom note, a lot of times they think, or the media portrays this as you pay the ransom and it's over, right? You got your data back and you're back working, in the next 10 minutes. And that's not the way it happens, right? So,
No.
Even after you pay that ransom, which one source, we do a lot of incident response, we protect and defend a lot of organizations. We always say, don't pay the ransom. That's easy for us to say, right? Because it's not our business, but that's typically good advice. And we say that, but even if you do that, there's so many things that go wrong. You're negotiating with a criminal already, right? I mean, so there's no honor among thieves here. They're looking to get the fastest buck they can. So just because they give you a program to decrypt, or you get a decryptor, you still got to, just as you said, you got to certify that your network's clean. You've got to rebuild from scratch. Talk a little bit about the impact that has on especially a small business that has a relatively small staff, the toll it takes, right? Because I know, I'm not sure in your specific incident, but I know in incidents we've been, especially a small staff, the people that are in charge of getting the business back up from an IT perspective, the CEOs call them, every day, every 2 hours, or back up. Is this can I get an email? Can I get my, the pressure is sitting on you and your team for that extended period of time, right?
So I'll go back to when we got hit. Basically what we did every day was we had a list of services and computers that we wanted to check, that we wanted to make sure that before we turned them back on, they were clean. So that was our first step. After that, every afternoon we had a meeting with my chief operating officer, my vice president. We had a meeting every afternoon saying, okay, what services do we want to prioritize to get back online first? So we set that precedence up and say, okay, these have got to be first. Then we just went through it every day, and basically, me and my staff, and there's only 3 of us. So me and my staff, we basically went through and just, okay, this is the one that's got to come online first. This is the one that's got to go. And you're right, the pressure was there every day of, we got to have this on, we got to have this on. And we're like, that's great. And we'd love for you to have it. The problem is it's not ready.
Right.
The data we air gap backups here. So I wasn't concerned about our data, but obviously you have to have something that holds the data. Right. And that being the computers, the servers, those type of things. So it doesn't matter that your data's safe.
Yeah.
You still have to get it on a platform and get that platform up and running, and then be able to say, okay, now with the computers that you've certified as safe, now you can come back in. Yeah. So that whole time frame you're talking about, like I said, until we got punched, we thought, oh yeah, we'll have this back up, a couple days, week max. Right. And that's not the case, because again, you have to make sure that who you got in your network, you got out, and they have they can't get back in the same way. Or, you were talking about paying the ransom. So let's say you paid the ransom, and the next thing you know, 2 weeks later, they go, those people pay. I'm going to hit them again. Yeah, exactly. And you just don't know that the payload is still sitting on another computer lying dormant, just waiting for them to go. So we, like I said, it took us probably a good couple of weeks to get back up and running. The major systems we got online, back within 3 days, which was, was our goal for our disaster recovery plan. But, the 2 weeks, and then little ancillary systems after that. There were other systems that, people were like, oh, we need this back online. I was like, no, we don't. And so it was also shielding ourselves from those people like going, I can't check my email. And you're going, at this point, I don't care. Right.
That's not really high priority at the moment. Right. But you'd be amazed at how many organizations we've gone into where email seems to be the critical business function for everyone, and that one gets put high on the list. So Yeah, I appreciate that. I wanted us to get a sense, or have our listeners and watchers get a sense of some of the challenges that are faced when a breach does happen or an incident happens. And we tell clients all the time, we feel like we do a really good job of protecting and defend our clients, but we by no means offer a 100% guarantee. There is no silver bullet that I can say,
Yeah.
you are never going to get hit. In fact, in the opposite, what we tell clients is, it is not if you're going to get hit, it's when you're going to get hit. When you're going to have an incident, what we try to do is talk through about minimizing what the impact is there. We could minimize, okay, we have a breach, somebody clicked on a phishing link, let's say, or whatever, and their computer's infected. Right. Do we have the means to contain that device or keep it segmented so it doesn't spread across the network and wreak havoc? But and you can, I think the planning piece is a key piece for businesses to think about. But think about it in the context of what may happen, right? If you do have an incident, how are you going to recover? What gets recovered first? What's priority? The VP of sales and the VP of engineering both are yelling in each ear at the same time. Who are you going to fix first, right? You got to make some choices there. That has to happen ahead of time.
And I will say this, Steve, when it happened to us, like I said, my chief operating officer and my vice president, they basically ran interference as well, and they were like, stop. If you want to check your mail, we have Office 365. Go to the web interface and check your mail. Yeah, you don't have to have it on your computer. Yeah. So it's nice when you have the support of obviously of the people that are also yelling at you. You also, when you have their support as well, it makes things a little bit easier.
Yeah, without a doubt. When you have supportive folks around you, they understand kind of the plight that you're in. It goes a long way, because as you mentioned and played out here for us, those teams that are responsible for standing that infrastructure back up are under tremendous pressure and anxiety. They're trying to work 14, 15 hours a day, and it's not a one-day effort. This is a multi-day effort, multi-week effort potentially. It wears down on folks, believe me. I've seen many people walk off the job when we're in trying to help respond, and they just have had enough of it, can't do it anymore. And so it puts a lot of psychological and physical stress on organizations. And I think that's the thing that people miss a lot is, yes, there's businesses down, but how do you long-term affect some of your employees and staff that just don't deal with it real well because of the chaos that happens when one of these things happen. So if we think about that remote access and get back to that topic a little bit around protecting our environment, protecting our organization from potential threat actors who are, trying to be just like your employees and ride in on your remote access and those sorts of things. What controls, DJ, make you feel good that your environment's protecting the defend? I know for a lot of companies, after they deal with an incident, even if it's been a ways back, you're kind of always looking over your shoulder, right? You're suspicious of everything, which is good. Right. But what are things that you can share with our audience here about that make you feel good about where CopyPro's at, and how you could respond to another incident if it was to happen, or something that you felt was malicious or suspicious?
So one of the things that this actually did when we got hit, what it did was it actually kind of opened the eyes of the powers that be, I should say, that maybe we need to take some other steps. We need to do something else. We need to add in another layer of protection. And so when you're trying to get that, when you're trying to get that budget put in place for cybersecurity or for security for your network and stuff, it's kind of hard to talk to the people that are writing the checks about what could happen. Right. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this? You're giving scenarios that haven't happened yet. You're giving basically hypotheticals. Yes. Right. Is what you're doing, and trying to get somebody to write you a check for a hypothetical sometimes doesn't work. Sometimes, well, we've been good for 50 years. Why should I write it? Why do we need to do this now? But with the advancement of all these programs and these, the exploits and everything else that, people are trying to hit your network with, when it happened to us, it was, okay, so what do we do? What do we need to add? And so we were able at that point to then go, well, we need another layer of security. We need somebody We need somebody watching us when we sleep is
Right.
basically what it amounts to. And so we were able to, at that point, then basically, you guys were already, you were already servicing us for FireEye and different things. But it was also nice to be able to add other services that you offer that would then basically let me go to sleep at night, and basically have the pre-written instructions for the SOC and the NOC to basically say, if you see this happening on my network, there is no reason you need to call me. Shut it down.
Right.
Don't wake me up. I don't need to be woken up to basically tell you the same thing that I'm going to want you to do when you call me. If somebody's in my network in the middle of the night, if you notice an activity, if you notice something on my network in the middle of the night, shut it down. And I liked, and so does my staff, we like that avenue of basically, being able to have somebody else watch it when we're not around. So weekends, 24/7, 365, I got somebody looking at my network and looking at logs and looking at activity. Most of the time is the virus isn't, they're all going to act the same, I should say. They're all going to try to go sideways. They're always going to try to access something that you don't know what they're trying to access.
Right.
Somebody coming into your network on the VPN in the middle of the night, who's working at 3 o'clock in the morning and basically wants to hit 6 servers at the same time, shut it down. So it's almost behavioral, and it's nice to have those services in place to where the appliance that we have or the actual people that are looking at our network can basically recognize the behavior of someone who's not very honest, and basically go, yeah, you don't need to be in this network, and just basically shut the whole thing down. And so that again, that helps my staff. That gives us a better attitude towards it. It lets me sleep at night, and I will say this, it makes my owners feel a heck of a lot better knowing that there's always somebody at the switch, no pun intended, but there's always somebody at the switch. So.
Yeah, I think that's a key piece as well. There's some great security tools out there, and tools are a great thing. You have to have them, but if nobody's watching the tools, they can tell you what's going on all day long. If somebody doesn't take action, then you have a gap, a period of time there where attackers can do what they want. As you think about the remote access and workers who are using remote, how do you think about other devices connecting to your network, DJ? So you mentioned before, maybe somebody, and this may play into a little bit of the zero trust network idea that companies have, where they can allow any device to connect to their services or applications because they don't trust any of them, right?
Right.
Containers around that where you've got to, really have very strict controls when they access those things, and they can only do certain things. But how do you look at it from a CopyPro perspective? Those people who are working from home and maybe they're using their own personal computer to access your network, or they're using an iPad or some other device. What's your thought process around those pieces?
My thought process in the beginning was, it's okay, what could happen? But since about 5 years ago, we basically let people know that there would not be personal access, on different things. We let them know that if we see something that comes on, obviously there's 2 different networks here. There's a public network and a private network.
Right.
If we see a personal device show up on the private network, not only will it be blocked, but you may have some sort of disciplinary action that comes against you as an employee as well. So, bottom line, don't do it.
Yeah.
If you have to get on at your house and you're going to work from home, just like at our owner's house, we employed basically what I call a hardware VPN, not a software client.
Yeah.
You guys call it a Z3 box, the Meraki.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So, if I've got people that I know are going to be at home for any length of time, I'd rather employ a hardware VPN that I have control over versus trying to get somebody on a software VPN. Now, that may be cost prohibitive for some people,
right.
But again, it's all about, risk versus reward, and you gotta weigh that. And so, if you want to pay somebody to be at their house, I mean, there's $20 a month for a hardware device to keep hackers out of your network. I'm all about it.
Yeah.
So.
And are you worried about those personal devices, scrutinizing them from the standpoint of, do they have our EDR, our endpoint agent on them? Do they have maybe, personal email on them? Are you worried about them potentially insider threat? Maybe there's data that's valuable, I'm sure there's valuable data that's valuable on the CopyPro network. Did they siphon that out? What are your thoughts around that?
So and we've had multiple discussions about that around here. How much is too much? How do we limit access with, to our sales reps, to our technicians? How do we limit what they see, but at the same time give them enough information to where they can do their job?
Yeah.
And so, we've had okay, if we didn't trust them, then why did we hire them?
Good point.
And so it's one of those things where as employees, yes, I'm going to have people that walks out of here with data, whether it be, the actual physical files themselves, or whether they've, gone in and, searched it, downloaded it, put it on a flash drive and, put it on a different computer at their house, accessed it, took a screenshot of it with their phone. There's just too many ways for people that have ill intent to be able to get things. And I can't police everybody. So it's one of those things where, yes, I'd love to be able to stop everybody every time. I'd love to disable all the USB ports on every device and, and not have anybody do anything. But again, these people have to be able to work, and I hired them for a reason. Don't hire them and go, oh, this guy's a thief. Then why did I hire him? Or why did I hire this person if I thought they were? And so my thoughts are on it that, do the best you can.
Yeah.
That's about all you're going to get away with. Do the best you can. I mean, we've had multiple, instances of people that left here and took their files with them, but at the same time, what you going to do?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a struggle that a lot of small, medium enterprises have around that data leakage, or even the idea of allowing somebody's personal device or mobile device connecting back to your network to get data or have access to the network. That's always a challenge, right? Because you've got this delicate balance between connectivity and people who want to do their job versus people who potentially have ill intent, or maybe even it's somebody who has a personal computer at home that they've gotten a phishing email on, or somehow has gotten a malware virus on it. So it's definitely a challenge, and most businesses just don't have the money, right, to implement those, Fort Knox scenarios where DLP's in place and where every piece of data has gone to and where it's come in from, and you can police every system. And so I think that's the concept of zero trust is a great concept. I think it has a lot of validity and a lot of merits. The question is, can you afford to implement it, and what's the best way to implement it, or how do you implement it? I think to your point, for some businesses, there has to be a lot of trust, and you have to hire people that you think are going to do the right thing. But then on the backside, you put those protections in place in case something happens, the in case scenario where something does get on the network because their personal computer, whatever. You got some protections, people watching, as you mentioned, to look for those and make sure that they're taken care of.
And I'll go back to something that you said earlier. You said there's no silver bullet.
Right.
Okay. So think about that. That's just trying to keep people out of your network. There's definitely no silver bullet once you let them inside of it.
Yes, right.
Now, if you think you're going to hide everything and keep everything secure, once you've given them internal access to it, there's definitely no silver bullet for that. There's not, and they ain't a copper bullet for that. So there's nothing on that. Again, you trusted them enough to hire them. They're going to have access to information that you don't necessarily want to leave the building. But again,
how do you?
There has to be some trust, otherwise they shouldn't be an employee.
And another point there is that there are, as I mentioned, do you have enough money, time, and resources to put the protections in place to, let Joe only access this one folder with this data on it? And even in that case, the question comes up is, what if he needs access to other folders just to do his job, right? I mean, there's a lot of strategy and planning that goes around that, and usually what that winds up meaning is money, right? And that's a place where it's difficult for small medium enterprises to address. So I think you're right. You build up the moat in the best way you can to protect as much as you can,
right?
With the idea that we're going to hire folks that we feel are trustworthy. We're going to hire folks that are going to do the right thing and trust them with the ability or empower them to make sure we work together as an organization to keep things safe. So I like that idea and that concept. I think there are most definitely challenges that we have to look at all the way around there. And allowing our remote employees the ability to still work from wherever they're at, whether it's due to their job function as sales reps or because of the pandemic and they want to stay home. That's definitely a big challenge. And we think about that idea of empowering them to connect, but the overlaying piece of security so they can do it securely, I think is well as has to be addressed. And as you pointed out before, you go in and talk to your C-suite folks, your owners, and say, this is, what if this could happen? That's a, difficult conversation. So let me ask you about that a little bit, DJ, as you experience both the pandemic, you mentioned an incident that obviously everybody reads the newspapers and all the ransomware media that's been hit. How has your leadership changed, or have they changed from this idea of security and securing the CopyPro organization itself from a data perspective?
So they didn't really, I mean, they've always wanted it secure.
Yeah, right.
But obviously since the incident, the mindset now is, DJ, are we doing enough? Do you think this is enough? And to your point, the silver bullet point, I was like, don't get me wrong, I can keep spending money.
Yeah, right.
But it's never going to get to 100%. The only way you're going to keep people out of this network is to shut the internet off.
Yeah. Right.
And that's it. And then how are you going to do business at that point? So you can't. There has to be some sort of connectivity. I mean, obviously, if you shut the internet off, the phones wouldn't work here either. So that's kind of a moot point as it is. But at the same time, so their attitude toward it is okay. What do we need to do to get ourselves reasonably safe and basically put in place something that, like I said, risk versus reward, that's going to keep us from waking up in the middle of the night and go, oh my God, somebody's in our network. And so they were more open at that point because it was no longer a hypothetical. It happened.
Yes.
And so at that point it was much easier for them to grasp, okay, how did this happen? And when we explained, I was like, it's what they probe every single port every single night looking for somebody leaving something on, and they found one.
Yeah.
Right. And so basically once they realized then the scope of what we were talking about, then it was very, I don't want to say easy. It was easier to explain to them at that point. Again, it wasn't a hypothetical, this really happened. And they were like, okay, now what do we do?
Right. Yeah.
And so therefore it was, okay, we're going to need this in place. We're going to need this in place. We're going to need this. Here's how much money I'm going to need to make that happen. And it was, do it, and
what do those conversations look like now, DJ, with your leadership? Is it a risk conversation that you have with them? I'm sure you mentioned they ask you still probably, monthly or quarterly, however often you're meeting with them. Are we good? I'm sure that they ask that question to you. Are things good? Are we lacking? I mean, is it a risk kind of conversation that you have with them now?
It's basically I meet with my boss once a week, and basically that conversation is, if there's anything that looks like it's a compromising situation, then she wants to know about it. And then when she meets with the chief operating officer, it gets brought up. But I will say that if anything, we're actually going the other way. We're actually trying to minimize anything that we even thought was a risk. We're trying to bring down it. Again, going back to the apps, going back to I want to turn VPNs off. If this person's going to be working from home on a regular basis, then great. Then let's spend the $20 a month, get another Z box, put it at the house, another hardware VPN, put it at their house, lock down their computer, take away, admin rights, make sure they can't put the strawberry shortcake app on there or the Minecraft app on there for their kids to play while they're homeschooling or whatever. So it's a much easier conversation. And now that the I should say the processes have been put in place, those processes don't change now. And so you don't get the one-offs where, well, I just need access for a little bit.
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
You'll get nothing and like it.
Yeah. Right.
So you'll either work our way or you won't work. And if you won't work, then you don't get paid. And so it's one of those things where we've actually just put the processes in place to try to keep us a lot safer than we were before. And now when things are brought up, we'd like to do this or we'd like to do this. Yeah, no, they don't. Those things don't happen.
Yeah, so you feel like because you've been through an incident, you have a little bit more empirical evidence to say we know what happens when we don't follow the rules, right? We know what happens if things go bad. We're gonna play by the book, or we're gonna do it this way from here on out. Yeah.
Yeah. The next time UPS sends you a message saying you got a package coming tomorrow and you didn't order anything, don't click on it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think that's my favorite phishing email is the package thing, because everybody falls for it. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Everybody wants that package, don't they? So they're looking for, hey, somebody sent me something, long lost aunt sent me something, I want to click on it.
Somebody sent me a surprise. So it's a surprise, all right. Go ahead and click on it.
Tell me, speaking of that, tell me how you're thinking about, training your employees or security awareness. What does that look like at CopyPro? As I'm sure if you've got a sales department, like most organizations have sales departments, they get a lot of email, right? They get email from everywhere and anywhere. How do you use them or empower them to help protect CopyPro?
So the first thing that I have to do is help my employees, and to help my employees is to try to get something on the network or get something in between their device that basically keeps those temptations from getting to them. That keeps those phishing emails away from them. And then we also educate them on okay, check who the sender is, and don't just go by the name.
Right.
Hover over the email address, and if it's gobbledygook@gmail.com and it's supposed to be from somebody at the office that's at copypro.net, then more than likely 100%, it's not who you think sent the email. And so we educate on that. And I will say that I get emails every day from my sales reps that they won't open it. They'll basically go, hey, they'll send me actually like a screenshot, and they'll go, hey, does this look like it's spam, or does this look like it's, I was like going, oh, not only does it look like it, it is. I said, just delete it. I said, now find out how it made it through our spam filter, and that way it won't get to you again.
Right.
And so yeah, we educate our sales reps, our people in the field. We also educate obviously our employees in-house, and just kind of let them know, hey, you shouldn't be opening this, you shouldn't be opening that. If you get something from somebody and it doesn't make sense to you, especially the ones now with Office 365 about, hey, your password's getting ready to expire, just, key it in here, and you're going, yeah, but look who it's from,
right.
And it's, obviously usually some obscure email, from some European country. So, again, we try to protect our employees from themselves. And so we've kind of gone out of our way to try to make sure that what they do get is limited. And one of the things we put in place was a geofence, for anything coming from the outside. We employed some email security that goes through it before it gets to you. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of false positives in the beginning. So anybody who's thinking about doing that, just know that, if you were used to getting email from somebody and all of a sudden it stopped and the IT guy told you, yeah, we just put our new spam filter in place, get a whitelist going, because otherwise, you still should be getting those emails. So in the beginning, it was tough, but once we educated them and said, look, if you're supposed to be getting email from somebody, let us know. Those are valid. We know they're valid. Send them to us. We'll get it whitelisted. They'll start coming through immediately, and we'll get the other ones released. Not a big deal, but you got to let us know.
Yeah. Right. So there's give and take there with the employees, both about, hey, we're trying to protect you, but we also want to make sure that we're not limiting your work, and it just got to be some communication there, right? Back and forth. Yeah.
Next year, and I'll say this, Steve, next year we actually have put in some money in the budget for some phishing exercises.
Yeah.
So we're actually gonna, basically kind of get somebody to send an email out and see how many people over it, give us back the stats, let us know who opened it, and then basically kind of even get some more instructions. So the people that click on it, that then call you and say, no, they didn't, when you actually know they did.
Yeah. Right.
Then it's one of those things you can actually educate even further, because people are human, they're going to click on stuff. I mean, that's why the internet's full of clickbait.
Yes, that's why. That's why it's one of the most effective means the attackers have to get access to people's computers, because they know people are going to click on things, right?
That's right.
And so that brings me to the point too, that understanding that people are going to click on things, and trying to prepare them or get them more educated about what not to click on, I think is the place where a lot of organizations maybe aren't doing enough. They're falling down a little bit from that standpoint, because the attackers, you mentioned the Office 365 one, there's a lot of those impersonation emails that are coming out now that try to get you to put your credentials in, right? You know, they go directly to the attacker when they put their password in.
Right.
But those are ticking up more and more every day. And the less preparedness we give our employees, then we have to face facts that more than likely credentials are going to get out, right? And hopefully then there's where we minimize the impact. Yes, so maybe somebody's account gets compromised, but we have, you know, controls and tools in place where we can restrict or disable that account while we reset passwords and get things set back up, and there's minimal impact.
Yep, agreed.
On that going forward. Well, I think it's been a great discussion, DJ, and I appreciate your time and being on the webinar with us today. Are there other topics or anything else you think are worthwhile for our viewers to consider or think about?
Yeah, no, I mean, basically just have a plan and just know that more than likely, you know, your plan is going to have to be changed, adaptable. Some things on are going to be unforeseen, but at the same time, if at least if you have a good starting point with it, you know where to begin. Again, I'll go back to you. Everybody's got a plan until they get hit,
right?
You know? And then at that point, you know, so at least have a plan. But our disaster recovery plan, while it seemed good on paper and basically started off pretty good, it was the time that killed us. We didn't realize it was going to be that long certifying those things. So just be prepared for that. However long you think it's going to take, you may try to double it.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
Because more than likely that's going to be the reality of it.
Yeah, and so I'll open up our discussion to some questions. If you have a question, you can post it in our chat. We've already got a couple. One of them I think speaks directly to what you just said. DJ, the question was, how do we minimize a security incident? And I think the idea you just mentioned about planning is one of the main ways, right? Because once again, it's not if you're going to be hit, it's when. Having a plan in place. We always stress to companies as well, an incident response plan, a disaster recovery plan. Make sure you put it in place. Make sure you don't just put it in place and sit it on a shelf and never look at it again. You got to exercise it, right? We talk to companies about and we do tabletop exercises with companies where we talk about a major critical disaster. Let's actually talk through it and go through it as if it happens and see where gaps may be and consider those things like you mentioned. You don't know what you don't know, right? And if the idea is that, hey, we've got backups and we can just recover really quickly, you know, we're right back up with data. That may not be the way it plays out, depending on what state your hardware, your infrastructure, you know, all that stuff is in, right? So having a plan and testing that plan or going through that plan is one of the main ways we see companies can help minimize an incident. I think in addition to that, the other thing too is just starting to have conversations with your leadership about how important security is to the organization and what can happen. And appreciate the information you shared today. I think those are eye openers for people to understand that everybody's a target. Back in the day when it was when these threat actors were very specific, attacking specific large targets, those days are gone. They're just trying to make as much money as they can, as quickly as they can, and anybody they can reach, they're going to reach. So having some tools in place, having somebody watching those tools, that's a good way as well.
Yeah, and I would say also, you know, have a partner, have somebody, you know, like we partnered with OneSource, and for the biggest reason, because you guys are down the street.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's one of those things. You know, when we got hit, you know, obviously you were one of the first people that I called. You know, because I needed not just the guys that I had. I needed bodies.
Right.
I needed somebody to come in here and basically go, okay, look, you know, it may be tedious, but at least it saved us time because again, and that was part of our disaster recovery was, well, if we get hit, then we're going to need some help because there ain't but three of us.
Right.
You know,
sure.
And so it was, you know, getting bodies in place and, you know, get a partnership with a local computer company or a local computer security company, obviously.
Yeah.
And just let them know, say, do you guys have a critical response team? You know,
Right.
have somebody on, you know, basically on your speed dial that's, if we get hit, I need to call these people because again, if I need boots on the ground or if I need somebody, you know, basically come out here, whatever, I mean, it helps.
Yeah. Without a doubt. Good point. Another question here. We have never had a security budget. How do we start? So I think there's one example we presented here today. You talked about, you know, obviously if you have a security incident, most definitely those discussions are going to happen organically, right, about a budget. But what about people who are trying to get ahead of this, DJ, who've never had a security budget, but they're listening to your description of what you've gone through, the things I've shared about a lot of the companies we've helped from incident response? What would be your guidance to maybe somebody who's an IT director or IT manager for a company, and they never really had a security budget, but they see the importance? How do they communicate that and get leadership buy-in?
So basically, the first thing you want to do is, I mean, obviously, you got to calculate how many nodes you have. I mean, basically, what you're trying to protect, and then also what you're trying to protect. If it's just email protection, if it's ransomware, if it's virus, get a quote from, or get 2 or 3 quotes from whoever, but get you those quotes in place, and then that kind of gives you an idea. If I just want to protect the computers, the servers, the phone system, infrastructure, things like that, the data itself, just get some quotes together and basically go, okay, is this monthly? Is this yearly? That's the only way you're going to basically get started. I mean, is you've got to start with virus, you've got to start with ransomware, you've got to start with email. If you want some remote monitoring, which I highly recommend, having somebody monitor your network, some appliances on your network to do that, great. Give it to the ownership a la carte, and basically just kind of go, if we get this, this is what this will protect. If we get this, this is what it adds to it. If we get this, this is what it adds to that. And just have it as a line item. And basically, they're going to be the ones that basically, well, there's no way I'm spending that much money on that. Okay, well then here's the risk we have with it.
Right. Yeah.
That way, if and when it happens, they can go, I thought we were protected against that. And you can go, well, if you look at item 2, you jump down to 4.
Right.
So the top 3 we don't have. So here's where we are.
Yeah.
But then that also alters your disaster recovery plan as well, because again, if that happens, then more than likely you're going to have to buy a new server. You're going to have to buy, some sort of air-gapped backup, some sort of online access. All those different things come into play. So it is based on your network. Your network better than anybody. More than likely, if you're an IT director out there, you probably built it.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where you know what needs to be protected and how. But I would start off with getting 3 quotes from 3 different people, and like I said, just in tiers. Here's what we got. Here's the money that it takes to protect us on a yearly basis, and go to the powers that be and explain it to them.
Great. Yeah, I think that is fantastic advice, because we talk to organizations and come alongside IT directors and have this discussion as well. The same thing we say is think about it as a risk discussion about, what are you trying to protect? What is the risk if those things are attacked and down? This comes into play too, not just for a cybersecurity incident, but think about, hurricane, or if you're, disaster recovery covers a wide range of things that may impact your business. We're focused on cybersecurity, but being prepared and understanding what the risk is, whether it is from a cybersecurity incident or a weather event or whatever it might be, I think puts it in perspective for the business folks. And what we like to tell people to ask their CEOs or the COs is, how long can we be down? I mean, that's a pretty frank question, right? But it starts getting wheels turning if we say, can we afford to be down for 5 days straight? Business, that puts it in a real perspective for companies, because 5 days being down from a security incident is no big, that happens all the time. That's not uncommon, that is common. And the question then remains is that a risk to our business? Can we survive that? What do we need to do and try to reduce that time to say if we were hit, we can reduce that time? And so if you think about it from a risk perspective, there helps drive some of the conversation and gets people motivated to want to have the conversation around security and how they overlap it in their environment. Well, I think that's all the questions that we had. We really want to thank everyone for joining us today. Appreciate everyone being on the webinar with us. If you do have any questions, we'll have a follow-up email coming out. You can respond back to that email, and we'd love to help you in any way possible. But we really appreciate having DJ on with us. DJ, fantastic job. Appreciate you joining us today for the discussion.
Thanks for having me.
We'll say, make sure to stay safe, be diligent. And if you have security questions, need help, need some advice, reach out to us at OneSource. We'll be glad to help you as much as we can. And we once again appreciate you joining us and talk to you again soon. Thank you, DJ. Great to have you.
Thank you.